Hello, in today's video, we're going to be talking about some of the biggest problems that are faced by landscape photographers and then give you a few tips on how to fix them. Let's go. If there's one thing that almost every landscape photographer is looking for, that is original compositions, unique images. It's important to understand though that there is nothing wrong with shooting scenes that have been shot many times before, because imitation is a really important part of the learning process. I've talked about it on a few videos before about the similarities between photography and music. And if you think about learning to play an instrument, one of the very first things that you do is to play somebody else's song. So it's just such a natural way of learning, and there's no problem at all with doing that in photography and landscape photography as well. So get out, go to those classic scenes, take those classic photos, and you never know, while you're there, you might see something different, something unique. Point the camera in a different direction and find an image that's just for you and personal and unique to you. Aside from hard work and practice, an easy way to start to find original compositions is to go out in all weather conditions. Because it's when we do that we will come across those unique and interesting weather conditions at the point that it changes. So changeable weather is great for going out in. Something incredible can happen. Something like rainbows, things like that. This is particularly useful for photographing your local area, a place where you might be a little bit bored of it or you've started to take it for granted. Getting out and photographing that scene in all different weathers, in all different seasons, can really make your images of that area really shine above anything else that anyone else is going to get, because you've got easy access to it. The second tip on this relates to focal length. Now, the world is becoming a smaller place. Landscape photography and travel are very, very popular. So a lot of the beautiful scenes that we have in the world have now been captured in all kinds of interesting and beautiful light. All is not lost though, because by strapping a longer lens to your camera, you can get in and isolate a subject in that landscape. This allows us to tell the story of that scene in a unique and personal way to you, and the possibilities are virtually endless once you start to create what are essentially portraits of the landscape. Personally, I use a Canon 70-200. I think that's just about right. I very rarely feel like I need to get in any closer than that. If I do, I can simply walk forward or trek forward towards the subject a little bit more. But the 70-200 range works really, really well. The next two problems are time and motivation. And I think these two sit together very naturally. We all know what it's like, don't we? We've all got busy lives. We've got to put food on the table. We've got to look after our family. We've got to keep a roof over our head, which means working and doing other things and sleeping and stuff like that. Things get even more difficult if you've got children. And then when you do get a smaller chunk of time, sometimes those pressures then will suppress our motivation to get out and do landscape photography. Motivation is something that we all struggle with, and I'm absolutely no different. That's particularly true for me when it's about getting up at 4 a.m. to do a sunrise shoot. It's just so easy to roll over and turn the alarm off, isn't it? But one thing that's really made a difference to me is just asking myself one little question over and over again. And that question is, am I willing? The power of this question is unbelievable and can benefit you in all aspects of your life. It demands an answer, and by asking it repeatedly, it will force you to eventually be really truthful with yourself and be much more self-aware. Am I willing to go out and capture a sunset after the kids are in bed? Am I willing to go out in bad weather? Am I willing to climb a mountain? Am I willing to get up at 4 a.m. to capture that sunrise? Watching this now, it's very easy to say yes. But when that alarm goes off at 4 a.m. and it's still dark outside, ask yourself again, am I willing? If you then roll over and turn that alarm off, you will know that you were not willing. Being unwilling though is equally powerful and not necessarily a negative thing. It can be just as good at helping you to make your decisions and guide your motivations. Am I willing to spend time away from my kids on a Saturday afternoon to go and do some landscape photography? No, I am unwilling to do that. Am I willing to climb a mountain by myself? No, I'm unwilling to do that because I don't have the experience of the outdoors and the experience of the mountains yet. So you see how it works. It's very powerful either way. And it just helps to remove the BS, remove the silly narrative that often surrounds our life. I'm gonna do this, I'll maybe do that, I'll sort that out tomorrow, all that kind of thing that is essentially you just procrastinating and not making a decision. Just by asking over and over again, am I willing, you'll very quickly get to the truth of what you actually want to do. So am I willing to get up for that sunrise at 4 a.m? Yes, I am. It's then a case of trying to make it easy for yourself. Get everything prepared the night before. Lay everything out to make it easy in the morning. Have a plan. Know where you're going to drive. Know the time it will take. Know where you're going to park. Have the composition that you're going to take scouted out from another day. Once you've decided that you are willing, then put a plan in place to make it easier to execute. When we imagine doing landscape photography, I think there's very few of us that are thinking about doing it in the driving rain and gale force winds. It's funny because when I run workshops, sometimes I have certain clients that I get a sense that they genuinely want me to control the weather. But what I tell them is that when we go out in bad weather or we have flat light, often we can learn a lot more from that because we're having to be much more thoughtful about what will work in a composition, what perspective we want to use. And I think there's a lot more to gain sometimes from going out in bad weather. And we still have those opportunities when things change to capture something really, really special as well. By going exploring in bad weather and flat light, you just never know. It's amazing what persistence and perseverance can do. Am I willing to go out in bad weather? Yes, I am. Now, physical ability is a big one. I know a good portion of my audience are not able to climb a mountain or not able to put too much distance between themselves and the car. And that's fine. There are still numerous opportunities to capture great landscape photographs. Scotland is particularly good actually because if you drive to Scotland, a lot of that beautiful and interesting scenery is viewable from the car window. It's incredible. The North York Moors are another one. There's loads of places. It can happen to any of us as well. I know personally, the older I seem to get, the more the list of physical problems seems to grow, and some of them can prove very restrictive as well. There is still a link to mindset though, so the question, am I willing, becomes more important than ever, I think. My time as a police officer, I saw the full range of physical restrictions, from people who had no arms and legs to Olympic athletes, and it was often the people with severe physical restrictions that were some of the most positive people, because that mindset they've got into has created that positive aura around them to make the best of it. Virtually everyone is capable of increasing their physical activity by, say, 10% or more. It doesn't have to be much depending on where you're starting. Get a doctor's advice if you feel that's necessary, but I think it's important for us all to try and, including me, try and increase our physical activity, because the positivity and the sense of control you get from doing that will benefit you throughout your life and hopefully make you more capable of getting out into different landscapes. Am I willing to increase my physical activity? It's a very personal question for you. Now, another quite serious problem that some people will tell me about is the feeling of personal safety, particularly when going out to do landscape photography alone. Now, this affects men and women. That feeling of vulnerability when you're out by yourself in the countryside and in the mountains and things is very understandable. When I trek down from a mountain by myself in the dark, fear is a constant companion throughout that. Now, thankfully, the statistics around random attacks in the countryside are favourable. You've got very, very little chance of getting attacked, but that doesn't help really a lot of the time. So again, it's a very personal decision, but we are fortunate that it is a very rare thing for that to happen. The safety issue that I'm much more concerned about is people's kind of knowledge and preparedness for the outdoors. I see far too many people starting to climb up mountains without the right gear. Even without water on a hot day, it can quickly get very, very dangerous in extremes of hot and cold. And it doesn't really take much to be prepared for that either. Am I willing to do landscape photography alone? There really isn't a right or wrong answer for this one. So the last three problems are big ones. They're the ones that people will probably tell me about the most. And firstly, that is what to look for when you first get into a landscape. And that will include things like trying to find the right perspective and make best use of the light that's available. The next one is post-processing. Post-processing is tricky, and it's a big part of the overall photography process, and particularly when we think that we can inject so much style and it forms so much part of our overall photographic personality that it's a really, really important step. And lastly, composition. By far the thing that almost every landscape photographer will wrestle with at some point, if not forever. These last three are very big topics and beyond the scope of a YouTube video, but I do break them all down in my brand new landscape photography masterclass. It includes an hour and 20-minute session on composition, and we talk about how to build your own approach to composition and use all the different compositional rules as our tools, essentially, to start creating some really beautiful landscape images. The masterclass as a whole is 7 hours of brand new content, and I guide you through the whole range of technical aspects, but also focus really heavily on the artistic side to get those beautiful compositions that really matter to us. We get out all over the country, and it's designed to inspire, educate and entertain, and I think you're going to love it. Just head to firstmanphotography.com/masterclass or hit the link down below. It's looking spectacular. There's a tinge of yellow in there as well, a tinge. So I'm ready to shoot pretty much. Let's just have one last little look. Oh, it's looking so good. 2-second timer, 1, 2, bang, there we go. Let's have a look. That is just fantastic. Right near the top of a mountain in the Lake District. An absolute reward for my effort. Not just coming out in the flat light, but climbing to the top and persevering with the day. This is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. This is why I want to make this video, to help you improve your photography and just to be able to experience this kind of thing. It's breathtaking.